Good evening, and welcome to the regularly scheduled City Clawson Council meeting of February 19th, 2019. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation done this evening by Reverend Matt Anderson. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you, Lord, for keeping your hand upon this city and upon this council today. We thank you, God, for all that you're doing in this city. We pray, Lord, that your blessings and favor would be upon us. Lord, we pray that we would be in one mind for this meeting today. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mayor Woolley,
Here.
Councilmember Ayers,
Here.
Councilmember Milan,
Here.
Councilmember Moffett,
Here.
Councilmember Albrick.
The first item on the agenda this evening is consideration of approving the consent agenda. What's included on the consent agenda is the meetings minutes of the regularly scheduled city council meeting from Tuesday, February 5th, 2019.
Madam Mayor, I move the consent agenda be approved as listed.
Support.
Were there any further discussion, corrections on the minutes? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Ayers,
Yes.
Councilmember Milan,
Yes.
Councilmember Moffett,
Yes.
Councilmember Albrick,
Yes.
Mayor Woolley.
Yes. And the ayes have it, and the motion carries. The next item on the agenda is a presentation by the Clawson Police Department on the 10th Annual Bowl-a-thon Scholarship Fundraiser, and we have Police Chief Scott Sarvello here to talk about it.
Evening, Mayor, Council. Well, coming up on March 8th, Friday, is our 10th annual scholarship bowling fundraiser at Astro Lanes. It's $20 pre-registered, $25 at the door. Includes bowling, pizza, and pop. We have, to date, given out $46,000 in scholarships. Over 22 scholarships to graduating high school seniors that want to enter law enforcement. Some field of criminal justice, not just police officer, could be the FBI. We've done forensic nursing, investigator type stuff to follow up with our scholarship. So those are renewable if we have enough funds. There are kids that have, I think the class that's graduating college right now would be their 4th year. We have renewed scholarships up to $2,000 a student. That covers a lot. Books, maybe a class. So every dollar goes a long way when you're dealing with college funds. I have 2 in college, and we all have some there, so we know, how that money gets spent. It's on our Facebook page, the event. It's on the city's Facebook page, right, Victoria?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure. You can contact Sergeant Baus. She's set this whole thing up at kbaus@cityofclawson.com. Please contact her, register beforehand. It's a great event. It's a lot of fun. I know the mayor usually attends. Always been there once or twice. It's good. The community comes out. We get a lot of the parents and the kids that obviously have been a part of our scholarship program showing up on that night. So it's good to recap with everybody too, see how they're doing and see where they're at in school. But like I said, this is a big class. I think we've had 4 go through all these years, so this is a big graduating class from college that they've been with us the whole time. So they've reaped the benefits, and the families are very supportive, obviously, of our efforts.
And I want to make sure I mention that please don't dawdle and think that you can show up the night of the event. So please register early because this has a tendency to fill up. I've been on the short stick of that a few times.
But when you do show up late, you help us with
I always just
50-50
pay
and
anyway.
everything
I
else.
just don't get to bowl because there's
And
no
donate.
lane.
Right. So it's a great event for everyone. We have a lot of fun. And it's good for us to bowl and, mix in with the community as well. Several of the officers attend, so it's a fantastic event for us.
Very good. Well, thank you very much.
And on that same note, if I could just recap with Coffee with a Cop, if you don't mind me adding to that. We
Please.
did that last week. It wasn't overly attended. It was in 10 a.m. to noon last Friday. It was a great event Cave put on for us and allowed us to meet with the public, have some people come in, talk to us, in their setting, kind of, not ours. So, but what I am planning in the future is an evening one. I've already talked to the school district. The chamber has talked to me about getting involved in the fire department as well. So we might set something up here at the community center and do a nighttime all-inclusive, just informational for people to come out. We'll have tables, gun locks, you know, some different tables with information. So that's our game plan as a city as a whole, to get everyone together. And just bring people out to talk to us, like I say, in a different setting than the formal setting. So that'll be coming up. You'll be getting some news feeds on that, hopefully sometime end of March.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And then the next item on the agenda is welcoming, introducing, and swearing in of Patrol Officer David Bellinger. Or is it Bellinger?
Bellinger.
Bellinger.
You're correct, Your Honor. Come on up. This is David Bellinger. He has been with us for a couple of weeks. He started on the 28th of January. He grew up in Midland, graduated Midland High School, then attended Michigan State University. Obviously, that was a shining moment for me when I saw that on his application, since I have two boys there. He majored in criminal justice. He spent the last year and a half at Perry Police Department in Shiawassee County. His current chief said he would have hired him full-time if they had more positions, but they don't. He was sad to see him go. He was a hard worker. He was described as past employers as honorable, respectful, a hard worker, team player. Like I say, he's been with us a few weeks. Things are going along very well. His experience is showing, and he absolutely is a hard worker. And we welcome him to our force. He would like to say a few words and introduce some guests that he brought with him today.
Please.
Yeah, like I said, Officer Bellinger here. I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank the board and the mayor for giving me this opportunity to work for such a great city. I've lived in the Metro Detroit area, relatively close around here, for the last 2.5 years. So that's something that I knew about Clawson. I know how great the community is, how great the city is. And I'm just very humbled and very grateful for this opportunity to work for such a great city, such a great department. And Chief Sarvello has been such a great help the entire way through. So like I said, from the bottom of my heart, I'm very thankful and grateful to be here. With me tonight, I brought my mother, Sue, and my Uncle Mark with me over here. And then also one of really good childhood friends of mine in the back, Matt, over there. And then I also have a couple friends over here in the back, Tyne and Michelle, sitting back there. So I'll just wish, I'm glad that they showed up tonight to support me, and really grateful once again for everything here tonight.
Well, thank you. Do you want to get a picture up here? Come up and...
Can I have you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear to support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of this state, the Charter of the City of Clawson, and to faithfully perform the duties of the Office of Police Officer in and for the City of Clawson, County of Oakland, and State of Michigan, according to the best of your ability, so help you God?
I do.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Next.
The next item on the agenda is a swearing in and introduction of Patrol Officer Kevin Wilds. Welcome.
Madam Mayor and Council, I would like to introduce Kevin Wilds as our next patrol officer. He will be starting on February 27th. He grew up in the Port Huron area. Kevin was in active U.S. Army duty from 2005 through 2008, and then he joined the U.S. Army Reserves in 2009 and currently serves as a U.S. Army Reserve. So we thank Kevin for his service and the efforts that he continues with the U.S. Army Reserve. He has past experience working part-time at Allegan County, St. Clair County, Yale, and his most recent job with Lexington PD. His past chiefs and military personnel describe Kevin as reliable, dependable, a good communicator, task-oriented, outstanding soldier, and a desire for service and duty. Through Kevin's background, everyone had nothing but positive things to say about him with the military and the departments that he worked for. Some of the part-time, that he did, those departments as well, said if they had full-time, they definitely would have loved to have retained him. But he was trying to get full-time. Obviously, it seems like he, had jumped a couple departments, but that's because he only had part-time experience and they couldn't offer him anything full-time. So luckily for us, we were hiring and he was on the list, so we were able to absorb him, and we welcome Kevin to the police department. He would like to say a few words, and he also brought some guests that he would like to introduce tonight.
Good evening. First, I want to say I'm very excited to become a member of the Clawson community. I've been looking forward to it for a long time. I'd like to thank everyone here for giving me the opportunity to be able to work here full-time, and I'm extremely excited to start. With me today, I brought both my parents, John and Patty Wilds, and my girlfriend, Alyssa Husek, is also here.
Would you guys like a picture with all of you? Your son seemed to slip out. But I want an opportunity so that you guys can get a picture up here for a special night.
I'll have you raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of this state, the Charter of the City of Clawson, and to faithfully perform the duties of the Office of Police Officer in and for the City of Clawson, County of Oakland, and State of Michigan, according to the best of your ability, so help you God?
I do.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Sailors are a little bit sloppier.
Did you want a picture with your
Yes, please.
mother and uncle?
Also, please come up and get a picture. You never can get your kids to take a family picture, so this is your opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very
And
much.
congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is consideration of appointing Chief of Police Scott Scarvello as designated Freedom of Information or FOIA coordinator. With the retirement of Chief Anderson, the FOIA coordinator position at the police department needs to be filled, and since they handle their own FOIA requests. It's my recommendation to appoint Chief of Police Scott Scarvello as a designated Freedom of Information Act coordinator for the city.
Madam Mayor, I move the appointment of Chief of Police Scott Sarvello as a designated Freedom of Information Act coordinator be approved.
Support.
I have a question just for clarification. Is this for the city or is this specifically for the police department?
It's police department.
Okay.
Clerk takes care of the rest of
I
them.
wanted to clarify that change did
Yeah.
not happen. So we just need to amend this motion to say for the
For the
police department?
Right.
Somebody like to amend that?
Does it, is that required?
Is it required for us to make that amendment? Or
I think we should specify.
I move the amendment to the motion that the Freedom of Information Act coordinator position is a representative of the police department in Clawson.
Support?
Any further questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Milan?
Yes.
Councilmember Moffett?
Yes.
Councilmember Albrecht?
Yes.
Mayor Woolley?
Yes.
Councilmember Ayers?
Yes.
And the ayes have it, and the motion carries. The next item on the agenda is consideration of approving the Public Service Agency rental policy resolution. The city normally charges for the use of city-owned facilities and rooms according to an approved Parks and Recreational rental fee schedule. The city council chooses to waive such fees for certain agencies, allowing these agencies to use such funds saved in pursuit of providing services to the citizens and city of Clawson. It's my recommendation to recognize these public service agencies and support their public service mission to serve the citizens and city of Clawson by approving this rental policy. And the organizations that are included in that would be AARP Tax Program, the ACHC, or Alliance for Coalitions of Healthy Communities, the American Cancer Society, the American Red Cross, AO Kids Community Theater, Boy Scouts of America, the Clawson 4th of July Committee, the Clawson Chamber of Commerce, the Clawson Community Coalition, the Clawson Community Foundation, the Clawson DDA, Clawson Farmers Market, the Clawson Lions Club, the Clawson's Rotary Club, the Clawson Troy Optimists Club, Clawson Youth Assistance, FAN, or Families Against Narcotics, Girl Scouts of America, GFWC, or the General Federation of Women's Clubs, and Quilts of Valor.
Madam Mayor, I move the Public Service Agency rental policy resolution be approved for the service agencies as listed.
Support?
Any further questions or comments? Just like to make a comment, those are all great organizations that do great things throughout the community, providing community events and recognition for people throughout the community. So I want to say thank you to them. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Moffett?
Yes.
Councilmember Albrecht?
Yes.
Mayor Woolley?
Yes.
Councilmember Ayers?
Yes.
Councilmember Milan?
Yes.
And the ayes have it, and the motion carries. The next item on the agenda is the consideration of approving the Michigan Department of Treasury Defined Benefit Pension Retirement Systems Corrective Action Plan. The interim city manager, Richard Haberman, will be providing a presentation regarding the proposed plan.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, members of the council. 2017, the Michigan legislature passed Public Act 202, and it provides a criteria for underfunded status or underfunded pension and underfunded retiree health programs. And in that, they have what they call triggers that would require a corrective action plan be filed with Treasury. Under the health system, the health system requires that the funded ratio be less than 40%. City of Clawson's funded ratio is less than 40%. For like most cities in the state of Michigan, we're on a pay-as-you-go basis. But unlike a lot of laws passed by the legislature, it isn't just one or the other, it is one and the other. And the and has to be that the budget or that the expenses on our retiree health care exceed 12% of our annual revenues, which they do not. And so as a result, we're not required to file a corrective action plan for our retiree health. If you all you may recall that in 2004, the city of Clawson ceased offering retiree health care to all employees. And so as a result, we have a frozen group, and as that group it will increase, but the most vulnerable or the highest expense area is between retirement and age 65, because at age 65 we go to Medicare Advantage and the cost of health insurance reduces by about 60%. So as a result, we're looking at a plan in which our costs are probably close to max, which is under the trigger, and so very likely we will not have to file a corrective action plan. Second is the pension, and the pension requires that the funded ratio be less than 60%, and the expenses related to the pension exceed 10% of our revenues. And in fact, our pension plan does exceed both categories. Our funding percentage is in the high 40%, so it's far less than 60%. And our annual payments prior to this year exceeded 1.2 million, which was more than 10% of our revenues. And so that's what triggered the requirement that we file a corrective action plan. The council will recall 2017, the city sold what they call pension obligation bonds. And essentially, we took our entire underfunded liabilities of $14,119,000, and we've sold bonds of $14,340,000 for totally eliminating the unfunded liability. The only percentage that we have, or the only payments we have now, are what's called an annual required contribution, and that's the amount of contribution or percentage of salary that we pay for each current active employee who in advance of their retirement, so we can ensure there'll be sufficient funds to cover their retirement. And so as a result, we have eliminated all of our unfunded, and the only liabilities that remain are our funded liabilities. So as long as we make our payments, we will be fine. We'll be at 100%, and this will be the last corrective action plan that needs to be filed. However, the legislature, in its infinite wisdom, requires that the city council approve the document as it's been presented to you, and then what I will do tomorrow is I'll submit it to Treasury.
Do we have a motion first, and then any questions?
Your Honor, I move the Michigan Department of Treasury Defined Benefit Pension Retirement Systems Corrective Action Plan be approved.
Support.
Were there any additional questions that anyone had for Mr. Haberman, or comments in regard to that? Okay. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Albrecht,
Yes.
Mayor Woolley,
Yes.
Councilmember Ayers,
Yes.
Councilmember Milan,
Yes.
Councilmember Moffett.
Yes.
The ayes have it, and the motion carries. The next item on the agenda is consideration of a request by the Clawson Lions Club to hold their 21st annual Down on Main Street Car Show. Mr. Ayers, would you like to speak of that, or will Mr. Kucera like to come up
Mr.
and?
Kucera's back there. Loves this.
Ayers here speaking on the Lions Club's behalf, and tell us a little bit about the great program.
I knew I was going to do this, or wear my Lions hat. Most of you here have been to the Lions car show, and this is pretty much Howie's baby. This is, like he said, it's the 21st year that we've been doing this. I joined the Lions, I don't know, probably 15-some years ago, and been helping with it ever since then. It's a great day. It seems to work wonderful for the town. We've never had any problems. People come in, they enjoy it. At one point, we had over 500 cars at one of the shows. And I don't see, we've never had any complaints, no problems. We clean up after it. As a pitch for the, on that day, a lot of the guys that walked up to us, so that's when they want to become a Lion. Everybody in town wants to join the Lions. So you can join the Lions anytime you want. When I joined, there were 60-some members. At this point in time, Clawson's down to a little over 30-some members. So you can go to our Clawson website and sign up if you'd like to join. It's a great organization. It's been around for over 70 years. All the monies that we bring in, most people think it's all going strictly to leader dogs. Not all of it goes to leader dog, but it all goes to sight and hearing impaired children and organizations. Any questions?
In keeping with tradition, is this the weekend prior to the Woodward Dream Cruise?
Yes, yes.
Madam Mayor, I move the request from the Clawson Lions Club to conduct its 21st annual Down on Main Street Car Show on Saturday, August 10th, 2019, be approved, and that Main Street be closed from approximately 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. on that day.
Support.
Any further questions? Thank you, Greg. Roll call, please.
Mayor Woolley,
Yes.
Councilmember Ayers,
Yes.
Councilmember Milan,
Yes.
Councilmember Moffett,
Yes.
Councilmember Albrecht.
Yes.
And the motion carries. The next item on the agenda is consideration of a resolution approving the 6th Annual DPW Open House. Acting Superintendent, Mr. Matt Hodges, requested that we continue the annual tradition of holding the DPW Open House. This year, he's scheduled it to be on Saturday, June 9th, from 9 to 12. It's a great opportunity to meet the residents, to view the vehicles, walk through the department, and get to meet some of the employees that take great care of our city. I would like to say that Mr. Hodges is currently the acting superintendent because our interim city manager does not have the authority to make him the permanent superintendent. So once there is a permanent city manager in place, that will be something that he will be able to address and take care of.
Your Honor, I move the resolution approving the 6th Annual DPW Open House on Saturday, June 9th, from 9 to 12 p.m. be approved. 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. be approved.
Support.
Any additional comments or questions? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Ayers,
Yes.
Councilmember Milan,
Yes?
Councilmember Moffett,
Yes.
Councilmember Albrecht,
Yes.
Mayor Woolley.
Yes. And the motion carries. The next item on the agenda is consideration, we want to discuss the current city clerk position. The city clerk, Mike Smith, retired. He gave his resignation and is leaving in March, and we now need to discuss what plans we have for the future city clerk position. So open the floor for discussion.
Victoria did send us her resume, and I was pleased and surprised to see an accounting background.
Now, we're at this time possibly looking at as an interim position, kind of see if she likes the job, see if it's working out, what type of resources we need to make sure that she's successful in that position. I think she's great. She's been a huge asset to the clerk's office. She's the one, when you see after the gavel and all the Facebook posts and all that information is all Victoria. So she has been the information person here in the city, and I really, really appreciate that.
Additionally, she received a strong words of support from the outgoing city clerk. I think that's good. He has confidence in her to take over this position. And her background, I think, is very good and diverse and will bring strengths to us that perhaps someone in the field might not have, because it's just a little bit different than, the clerk job is so big. There's so many different responsibilities over there, and her vast responsibility, I think, would definitely be an asset to cover those varying hats that that person carries.
I think she's done a great job so far, and I think she likes it. I've talked to her numerous times, and Mike did a good job in training her, and she's okay with me.
As I understand it, there's some classes or certifications or something that need to be taken or done. Is that true?
There's, I'm, at the end of March, next month, I'll be 2/3 through the program,
wow.
the certification program. So definitely well on my way to becoming certified.
And when would the last piece of it be completed, the 1/3?
March of 2020.
Oh, okay, so it's another full year, so it's
Right.
1 year for each third? Is that?
Exactly.
I figured that out.
And in between, there's, I'm taking continuing education courses and different types of training and programs to make sure that I have the adequate number of hours.
Yeah, I've heard nothing but good about Victoria, and I think she brings a good energy to City Hall, and I appreciate her for sure. When is Mike's final day with the city? That was March.
He'll be in 2 days next week, and then 2 days the following week is our plan.
Okay,
He had some vacation time he could use.
that's right. Yeah.
Mr. Haberman?
If I may offer a little anecdote, in Fraser, I had a city clerk retire, and we brought another employee up as a city clerk. And one of the very first things that she was able to do was to connect with the city of Roseville's clerk and mentor under him through her first couple of elections. Mike has already looked into that, and he's made arrangements with the city clerk in Royal Oak to assist. I'm not sure if you knew this or not, but okay, then I'm sorry. I just thought I'd offer that.
information to share, great
But
information to share.
he's make, that will give her some good support because she has her first election coming up. Thankfully, it's a school election, but it'll help her to get the cobwebs out and kind of get into the role so she's prepared for the larger elections that come down the pike. And I thought that was a good move on Mike's part.
Well, from my stand, it was a win-win for everybody because they have some of our electorate that needs to vote there. So we're going to host those people for them. And they're
Correct.
going to help with some personnel and any other mentoring. I don't know if it's mentoring, it's just another hands to help with it as the first time around.
Exactly.
So
We are going to be absorbing 133 Royal Oak voters that are in the Clawson School District. So, and I already have been working with Melanie Hallison, the City of Royal Oak clerk, and I'm working with the county. We already went over ordering ballots. So we're already in the process for that election. And everyone at Royal Oak has been exceptional in working with me, and they are going to provide, Melanie herself offered to come or send her deputy and send some election workers as well. So it's been a great partnership.
So what about the day-to-day responsibilities? Currently, we have you and Mike, and we'll be down to you only. What do you feel you're going to be needing for assistance, even in an interim period, so that the office is staffed and, you're not underneath the ball on anything, and we can still serve our residents well? So we'll need to discuss that, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. We have, Megan in the Treasury Department has offered to kind of go back and forth. But as May approaches, we definitely will need someone to help out in the clerk's office.
You feel between March and May, you'll be fine on your own with just someone that you just yell help, there's someone at the counter? Or just curious, because we have 2 full-time people right now.
Right, yeah, and we are extremely busy. So I think if we could get help as soon as possible, that would be great. But definitely as May approaches, the time of the city clerk is almost election related, so.
Okay. I guess that's going to be a future discussion that we're going to have and find out what, maybe that's when the new city manager comes on board, that we start talking with him about resources and.
Can we provide a temporary administrative assistant of some sort for City Hall?
Yeah.
In the meantime?
Yeah, I think that would be a great
I feel like we should probably
recommendation.
move on that sooner than later.
I think that would be real helpful, because Mike had been assisting me a little bit on some of the extraneous stuff, and I'm down to a one-person office now. Victoria's down to a one-person office. We probably could start looking at that. So I think unless there's an objection on the council, I think we may start try to find if we can find a part-time person, at least get started. And if the person works out, then it would give Victoria something to move forward with.
Are we looking for just a temporary person right now until we hire a full-time city manager to make the decisions, like a Kelly Services kind of thing, or are we looking to?
The difficulty you run into there is that, and the city has used Kelly Services in the past, the difficulty you run into is by the time you get rid of the training, get past the training and everything, they're a temp, and you invest a lot of time, and you're not going to get any return on that. Whereas it's pretty clear we're going to need somebody. She's going to need somebody, or the new city manager is going to need somebody. Previous to that, you had one full-time, one part-time. And I think if Victoria, if you feel more comfortable, Victoria could be the one that could find somebody that would assist her. And then if I need any assistance, because she's going to be here longer than I, and that would be more in terms of continuity. And also, it would give her a chance to assess the individual as to whether they are not only capable, but have a desire to move into a full-time position at some point in the future.
Yeah, and I would love, sorry, I would love to see some sort of, at some point, some kind of deputy administrative assistant that serves both the clerk and the manager's office. I think that would be helpful. I don't know, as we move forward with a full-time city clerk, whether we need a deputy city clerk at that point, it'd be something to evaluate as well, so.
So I guess we're looking for a proposal of some kind and written up so that we can discuss it and get Victoria and get it approved and look at salaries and things like that? Or is that completely under your watch?
Okay, we could do that. I know that even in my last community, we did have, in fact, both of my last community down south, my last community up north, or east, they both had part-time assistants, particularly during elections, but they did have part-time, and of course, my predecessor here had a part-time, so you're looking at perhaps one individual that could fill both part-time roles, but have one individual full-time to do that.
So is it best that Rich, as the interim manager, writes that job description, or is it more appropriate that Victoria does that type of job description because she's going to be the one talking to people and making that determination? What do you?
I would think Victoria would write it and then bounce it off Rich to make sure that everything that you need, but your needs need to be met first, and then whatever additional.
Okay.
I hate putting something else on your plate, but
Oh, no, it's fine.
there is a light.
Exactly, right. Oh, absolutely.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Just before that, I do have the memo from the city clerk who says his last day of employment will be tentatively Friday, March 8th. So.
Do we need to, as a body, fix a salary for the interim position and make that part of the motion too, or is that just a side discussion?
That's the next item.
Well, the salary is not
On the agenda.
part of that
Yeah.
discussion, but we can discuss it before we make the motion, or do I make a separate motion? What's most appropriate?
I'm sorry, Mayor, I'm confused. I thought we were still on item 14.
We smushed item 14 and 15 together.
There wasn't a motion part of 14,
No,
it was a discussion.
I'm sorry, I was thinking, I'm confused. I thought the motion for the individual, for Victoria to do the job description, everything was under 14, and then the next one would be strictly on her situation, her position.
Guess we mushed them together, because we did discuss her being in that position during that same time.
I guess my question is does the salary need to be part of the motion, or is that a discussion after a motion's made?
Discussion after the motion is made.
Madam Mayor, I move the resolution appointing Victoria Mitchell as the interim city manager, let me try that again. Madam Mayor, I move the resolution appointing Victoria Mitchell as the interim city clerk be approved with an effective date of March 9th, 2019.
Support.
March 9th.
Any further comments? Roll call, please.
Are we going to discuss the salary then, or is that going to be a whole separate motion?
I was under the impression it was going to be a separate motion.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Milan?
Yes.
Councilmember Moffett?
Yes.
Councilmember Albrecht?
Yes.
Mayor Willie?
Yes.
Councilmember Ayers?
Yes.
And the ayes have it, and congratulations on March 9th, Victoria.
Thank you
Excited to
very
have you on
much.
board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item, do we need to amend the agenda to add an item there to discuss that?
15A.
15A. So the next item would be to discuss the appropriate salary for our interim interim city clerk position.
Madam Mayor, I move the agenda be amended to include an item to discuss the interim city clerk's starting salary.
Support.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Moffett?
Yes.
Councilmember Albrecht?
Yes.
Mayor Willie?
Yes.
Councilmember Ayers?
Yes.
Councilmember Milan?
Yes.
Okay, the agenda is amended. So in regard to salary options, I know that there was a recommendation of $50,000 to be affiliated with this. The current clerk's position was, is that
37.
appropriate? Just want to make sure. Is $70,200, and the current salary of our deputy clerk is $39,000. So we're looking at somewhere in the middle. Now, I did pull some information from the past, just to kind of give us an idea. So I believe these were 2016, 2017 figures. At that time, the city clerk was, salary was $74,358, and the deputy clerk was $54,241. Don't know if somebody wants to make a recommendation amount. The $50,000 was presented to us by Mike Smith. It's a recommendation, but somebody else has some other thoughts?
Well, I don't know that Mike recommended that. That's what he said he started at. Is that correct?
Yes, Mike and I did discuss this, and I told him that would be my recommendation to the council based on our discussion. But he said that was the area that he started at as well. So it seems like a rational and reasonable place.
Let's start off 50 grand.
I have a question. Where was he in the certification process at that point? Had he completed it or no?
I don't believe he had completed
Okay.
it. I believe he recently completed it within the past year and a half, if I'm not mistaken.
He's very close to completing it.
Oh, so he's not even done himself?
No.
Okay. And then my other question is, this would be appointing her as the interim city clerk until we have a permanent city manager? And is there any expectation that when the position moved from interim to permanent, that there was a salary increase? And if there was, then I think we should inch it down a little bit so that we have the room to put it back up when it's permanent, just for discussion.
Recommendation on that.
You're talking a $10,000 jump? That doesn't leave us a lot of room to, I don't know when the timeline would be for when it was moved to a permanent.
But Mike's salary was $70,000, so we're at $50,000.
Is
We've got- is the interim-
the lower one, and for interim,
Right.
and then it would move up to 70 for,
Or you have that, space between 50 and 70. So to go down, to say we need to go down to, so just for argument's sake, 45,000 now, so you have,
room.
I say we give her the 54,241. That was the assistant, or whatever the category was of the assistant clerk, whatever. She's going to have a heavy burden to bear managing this on her own. She's going to do a great job, and I feel like we should compensate her accordingly from the beginning. I feel like you build your relationships from the start, and that's just how I would play it. I think for $4,241, it's not going to make or break, but I think it shows good faith on our part.
I agree.
any further discussion? Is there a motion?
I make a motion that we
Did you want to say
offer.
something, Mr. Ayers?
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
No,
Okay.
I make a motion that we offer our interim city clerk. I keep wanting to say manager.
I know, right?
Our interim city clerk, $54,241 a year salary to begin with.
Support.
If there's no other questions or comments, roll call?
Councilmember Albrecht,
Yes.
Mayor Woolley,
Yes.
Councilmember Ayers,
Yes.
Councilmember Milan,
Yes.
Councilmember Moffett.
Yes.
And the ayes have it, and the motion carries.
Excellent.
The next item on the agenda is the consideration of paying the bills as presented.
Madam Mayor, pay the bills?
Support.
Any questions on the bills? Roll call, please.
Mayor Woolley,
Yes.
Councilmember Ayers,
Yes.
Councilmember Milan,
Yes.
Councilmember Moffett,
Yes.
Councilmember Albrecht.
Yes.
And the motion carries. We're paying the bills. City Attorney's report. Mr. Kingsup.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council, there are two items for discussion. One is the domestic fowl ordinance. And I have read a lot about fowls, chickens, and others. And I put into this ordinance the definition of domestic fowls, including others, because we may as well discuss the panoply, and you can then reduce it. Because if we just pass chickens, someone else would come in and say, well, what about pigeons or whatever? So I put all the list in there. I want to read something now that was striking to me, and I put it in my report to you. And it comes out of Hanover County, Virginia. And the executive staff of that county made a very cogent observation, which is relevant to even this city. Introducing livestock in the form of chickens into established suburban residential communities has the potential to increase tension and acrimony among neighbors. Staff recognizes the benefits arising from locally grown food, the ability to instruct children about the keeping of animals for food production, and the potential microenvironmental benefits to individual properties where chickens are kept. But these benefits must be weighed against not only the practical implication enumerated above, but also the broader community implications. And that's really a statement that applies here. It's an urban area, close houses and so forth, and I'm not advocating not to do anything. I'm advocating that that's a dynamic that comes into play very seriously in considering the ordinance. So when I did the ordinance, I looked at a lot. I looked at ordinance outside this state and those in this state, and I looked at the Ferndale one, and I talked to the Ferndale attorney about that ordinance. They've not had any problems with the implementation of their ordinance. But then again, their staff are not trained. I formed the opinion as I went through this that if you're going to adopt an ordinance involving chickens or other fowl, I think it is essential that staff be trained in connection with the housing of them, the upkeep, and so forth. It's important to have that dynamic in place. I'm not saying there'll be a problem. There's not a problem in Ferndale that I'm aware of, but I didn't talk to the control officer, the animal control officer in that city either. Maybe if you think so, that your staff may want to do a follow-up on that. The ordinance itself has some unique circumstances outside of the numerous fowl that I've defined in there. By define animal enclosure, and I'm thinking that any ordinance that does come into play, a lot of people that raise chickens know basically what the animal enclosure should be to keep, avoid harboring of rats and mice and so forth underneath and other vermin, and also the narrowness of the netting on it. But it might be wise to have, if you adopt this, examples. I mean, people who come in and apply will have their own dynamics of what the pens are like, the outdoor areas, but you might want to have some examples as well. So people get an idea of the consistency that's important on the housing. It's the obligation of the owner to demonstrate that the requirements that are necessary for that housing to prevent vermin are actually work. And there are a lot of misconceptions about chickens. People say that chickens are going to attract rats and so forth. And there are studies that show that rats come in because of other causes. Dealing with compost piles or garbage is dumped into it, dealing with bird feeders on property and not being picked up on that. So there are other endemic features that come into play that are more relevant on attracting rats than necessarily chickens. I prohibited certain domestic fowl in Section 7. Those are roosters, peacocks, guinea fowls. Permission to enter the property. This was something that was in the ordinance in Ferndale. And I'm torn on this because, there's case law that no officer has a right to go onto private property. In this instance, I did it in the context of the fact that by issuing the license, there's consent that code enforcement can go on the property to look it over. They can't issue any violations just by virtue of that entry. But what they have to do is if they see violations, it's their burden to notify the owner and have a meeting with them to discuss what they observed. Now, I'm torn with that on one hand, but if it's in there, the officers really have to be instructed on what their role is in that context. It's just to observe and report and meet. That's it. It's not to issue ordinance at all. It's to try to reconcile issues they see exist with the owner. If there's are noises with chickens, the other concept that's come into play is enforcement. And the enforcement really deals with the fact that it's the site of the property, the condition of it, and so forth. If there are noises, we are not going to enforce that. We don't have noise ordinances that can measure the sound and the disturbance. So if someone comes in and they're a neighbor and they're talking about the noise from the clucking of the chickens, that's a matter that they have with the property owner. It's not a matter that we get involved in. And I'll tell you why. The Right to Farm Act covers chickens like this. And the Right to Farm Act also handles nuisances. So that's the forum or the statute under which the action can be brought. And we shouldn't be involved in that. It should be the neighbor that feels disturbed by it or disrupted by it. And they can do that. They can call code enforcement and have maybe monitoring of it if it's that. But it doesn't mean we're going to issue citations, because I'll bet $1 to a donut, prosecution is going to have a difficult time proving it when they don't have a level of noise or the constants of noise or whatever. And I don't think our law enforcement or our staff should be put in that situation.
Didn't we address that in the dog ordinance? Didn't we include barking dogs in the dog ordinance?
We did.
Why is that any different?
And Animal Control, Oakland County, comes in immediately on that. We don't do anything on that. We call them.
We did, the ordinance, though, does, if there's a dog is barking for more than 30 minutes, then the police can take action.
Yeah.
So
But
if
we
chickens are
generally-
clucking
we
for
get
more than
animal
30
control.
minutes.
Well, I'm just trying to differentiate when we say that if we have a barking dog for 30 minutes, they can call the police department and that something can be issued.
Right.
Why is this not fall under the same?
The barking
Concern.
dog,
a
the
decibel
sound
issue,
level
isn't
is a
it?
lot different than I think
Yeah.
the clucking.
It's all in the perception.
That's
No, it's
true.
measurable,
But
though.
again, I'm looking at staff and their limitations on what they can handle and what they shouldn't be able to handle, and let the individual neighbor, because they're going to have a second thought process on it about having to hire a lawyer to file a lawsuit against the neighbor and the clucking chickens. And so that's their issue. And the level of being disturbed, that's something hard to comprehend. It's personal. So that's another reason why I'm looking at, code enforcement should have measurable standards of enforcement and not the amorphic ones of noise. Again, that's just my observation. And I candidly say, when I looked at the ordinance in Ferndale, it was a little more harsh than this. And quite honestly, I am a constitutional rights type of lawyer. I believe in it very strongly. But then I look at the situation and what remedies exist that can be applied and what can't. And I put in the condition that no ordinance violation can issue from that inspection. It's a meet, greet, and try to settle. That's it, period. Then number of falls, I didn't do anything on the number of falls. The other thing is that GAMPS applies, Generally Accepted Agricultural Management Practices. That's in the Right to Farm Act, but it's not something that's clearly defined with guidelines. It's there in the act, but it's not defined so you can follow. So you're really looking at the ordinance that comes into play on that. And then there are notices of abatement that are in here. There are violations that I put in, various degrees of violations. So what I did was look at a number of ordinances, look at a number of reports, come up with the discussion of the text for your consideration. And I'm not advocating the number of fowl that I put in there. I'm putting it in there just to, if you want to discuss it now, you're going to get rid of the issue so it doesn't come up later on. And you've considered it. It's as simple as that.
I have a few questions. The permission to enter private property, are there other licenses that are issued
No,
that allow for that?
no.
I mean, I don't like,
I agree.
I don't like it. I really don't like it. I think it,
No, there are, and there's case law that says you can't enter. And that's why I'm saying if you apply for a license, you're consenting to that type of entry. There are statutes that do allow that. Again, I may have trouble with that as well. I mean, I'm ambivalent on it.
Well, I guess I would, similar but different, when you get a dog license, you're required to have rabies vaccination. So there is a requirement
True.
in getting that license. It may
Right.
not be inspecting your house, but if you don't
Right.
have one, then they
But
do
that's more of a
census, they
health,
do their-
safety, and welfare directly related. Whereas the inspection, it's more the area, and is it well kept? Does it meet the requirements that it's not attracting other vermin or whatever?
My concern with the inspection is that we would need to then have someone on staff who has a level of expertise on chickens and keep that person on, so if that person leaves, then we need to get another trained person. That's why I've advocated for writing the ordinance in such a manner that it addresses all those concerns, and so we can just say, oh, you've got your 2x4s in order, or whatever they are. I mean, you've built it such that it meets the criteria.
That's kind of looking at, like, so you have rat wall requirements, and
Yeah.
so
Right.
that type of specific thing, but at the same time, we have people that have built their coops already that may
Right.
or may not have taken any of those sort of things into consideration.
And I go on the assumption that people that have raised chickens and have an outdoor enclosure know what the heck they're doing. Now, that doesn't mean that John Kingsep, who comes in and applies for the first time because he likes to have a couple of chickens, is going to know what the heck he's doing. But it'd be nice if the code enforcement office had examples of appropriate outdoor enclosures.
A nice pamphlet.
That too.
There's an idea.
So, and the staff does have to be trained to some extent to be understanding that this is different. They've never done this type of thing before, and it's different. And you really have to sit down and have an understanding of the perspective of the chicken owner and what they go through and how they handle it, as well as your enforcement requirements. There's a balance there.
John, most of these people that have the chickens usually, they're up to code anyways. I mean, they're clean and everything else. I don't think they would have much of a problem with somebody having to come in there and check it out.
Well,
Well,
let
it's
them
what's the
speak to that,
cadence in
but-
which someone could check it out, I mean, how frequently, and can they talk about other things while they're there?
Well,
and
they
can
don't
I mean,
necessarily have to, they're just, unless there's a complaint, that's, our code enforcement would go in, I guess. And, but like I say, most of these people have pretty clean stuff. And if we need help, why can't we go to like Ferndale, some of their code enforcement? They know what's going on with these chickens and stuff.
Yeah, perhaps they do.
Well, I mean, they've had
I'm
it a
not
long
jumping to
time.
that conclusion.
Right.
I'm more focused on what we do to train our staff to be aware of it. And you get that information from the owners. I mean, they can provide information to the enforcement department on what is appropriate or what are examples of good enclosures. And those are the diagrams that can be used.
Just from listening, sorry, John.
Yeah,
Just
go
from
ahead.
listening to the current owners, there's a wide variety of chicken coops, right? You guys would not probably all agree that other people's are up to your standards, and there just has to be a minimum, and we have to understand that. And as far as accessing someone's property, it would be the same rules that would be applying to anyone needing to access someone's property for any other type of violation. Like, it's not reinventing the wheel. We're saying if there is a nuisance factor or such, that there would be the ability to go in and just check it out. And if you have to, I have a pool, and I've had people knock on my back door or actually front door or whatever and come in and want to go into my backyard. I don't say, no, you can't come into my backyard and hear my kids splashing. You can hear it from the next block or whatever. I mean, you don't say no. You say, come on in. I have nothing to hide. If there's something I can do, yeah, I'll tell them to get out, whatever. I mean, it's got to be the same thing. We're neighbors. We live together. We live very close together. It has to be friendly from the top down. And there will always be people who will fight it. There will be people who say, not in my backyard or whatever. But if you're not doing anything wrong, what's the big deal, right?
Well, that's true, but, you know, on the intrusion and going in, there is one way to reconcile that somewhat, to lay any concerns at, and that is that entry to the property under Section 8 is only allowed in exigent circumstances. Now, you're saying, what the heck does exigent mean? All right, exigent circumstances are something out of the ordinary, extraordinary, unusual, different. That's what exigent circumstance is. So the enforcement officer going in there and then making the examination has to document in their report what the exigent circumstance is. Because I, as the owner, have a right to know, why the heck did you go in when I wasn't around? So what was the exigent circumstance? So you got to really figure that out.
Well, so if code enforcement has a complaint regarding rats in somebody's yard, they cannot enter the property
That's
without
right.
the permission of the owner, regardless if there's
Right.
an exigent.
Right.
If there's 30 rats having a pool party in the back, they still can't enter the property
Not in my
without their
house.
position,
Just for the
without their
record, right, Scott?
permission. I mean, so I guess
I think this would be tested under any circumstance. I put on my liberal hat and my conservative hat on this because, you know, lawyers always go on both sides. And my liberal hat really did lean toward the fact of, gosh darn it, I don't want anyone looking in my backyard unless I'm around, number one, and I give permission. Because I don't know what you're going to look at because you're a code enforcement officer and I have an inherent suspicion about code enforcement officers. So that's the attitude I come to the table with. And there are people like that. They want their privacy maintained. I am convinced, however, that if there's a legitimate basis that justifies the broad ambit of public health, safety, and welfare, and you can document it factually in the ordinance as an exigent circumstance, that a court could uphold that, so long as there's no intrusion above and beyond what I've indicated of the inspection, then the contact and meeting. No issuance of warrants or citations. The cases that have come into play on that were where citations were issued later on for a nuisance that existed where the officer went into the property without permission.
So that was going to be my question. I mean, we have had instances where neighbors have complained about neighbors' properties, that they were a nuisance without chickens being involved. What is the process in that
Well,
instance?
I'll tell you what the process is, because I've been in that. You politely talk to the next door neighbor and say, can we go in your backyard and start taking photographs? And we start doing photographs. And that shows, if it's an exterior type of situation, the problem.
Are you allowed to ask for a ladder if someone has a tall fence and you can't see over?
We have done that too,
Okay, just wondering.
because we're getting permission from the adjoining property owner. So we can take the pictures, and we do. And then we contact the homeowner and say, we'd like you to look at these pictures and tell us what you're going to do. Those are generally problem situations that take a long time, but they do get done. And the owner does pay for the expense of it.
The ladder or the,
They don't, they don't do that on the extraneous stuff.
I mean, are pictures from an adjacent private property, and we have our prosecuting attorney here as well. I mean, are those are legal for us to obtain
There are.
and to submit?
They absolutely are. There's no invasion of privacy. It's open and notorious to the next door neighbor. So it sure is open and notorious to us if we have permission to go on the property. Isn't that right?
He's not helping.
cannot confirm or deny the allegations, but thank you.
That's when I put on my prosecutor's hat, and that's the argument I give.
So how do we get to a draft to tweak? I mean, I feel like we're still talking about what we think, like, how do we get to the end game here?
Well, there are a couple of ways you might want to do it, or some alternatives you all come up with, and that is, I think this was on the website, so I think people got access to it. So those who are here can give us their comments on it and give them to you. And then you can have another meeting to discuss it and exactly what you're in favor of, what you're not in favor of. My supposition, and I'm presuming this, is I think you're probably going to feel like limiting it to just one fowl, and that's chicken. Getting into the others can raise a lot of problems. Licensing, applications, different type of care situations. And again, I remind you to that Howard County Executive Summary. It's on all fours from the standpoint this community and what some of your limitations should be if you're going to have chickens.
I didn't see grandfathering discussed in this.
Yeah, actually.
It is intentionally omitted because everyone would be licensed. They'd have to come in and get a license. So where it would be corrected is if their enclosure is not satisfactory. Oh, on the grandfathering, I was going to talk about that. Thank you very much, Mayor. You have to determine the number. So if you say 4 and Renus has 7, well, he can keep his 7, but as they pass away, he doesn't get any more above 4.
That's what I'd like to see us do, with some sort of a declaration upon the initial licensing.
Right.
I have 7, you say I can only have 4, but I have 7 as of 2019. I will deliver the bodies to the new city clerk as they die, or somehow just maintaining.
So when you're applying, you identify how many.
Well, and I don't want to, I'm going to open up this can of worms. So we are looking into this just primarily because they were pet chickens.
Yes.
However, there's been, Ferndale changed their how many's because their chicken owners had hens that no longer laid eggs, and they wanted additional
right.
chickens, but the chickens that, once they no longer lay eggs, they still live for another 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, they do.
I hate to say it, because it was presented as a pet item, it's not, the agricultural argument is not good for me to say we're going to keep increasing it as egg-laying stops on the other hens.
Die.
Well, but they quit laying eggs at about 4 or 5 years, and then they live another 4. And so, and I know that that's a common issue with chicken keepers, or, that as their hens no longer lay eggs, they add to.
Well, maybe Rennis can answer that.
Perhaps. I wanted to just address Matt's point with respect to Mr. King. Good evening, by the way. With respect, there is one example that we can think of with respect to entry into somebody's home. We actually did have such an example with respect to the Medical Marijuana Act. We had the ability, law enforcement, I should say, had the ability to enter the premises with respect to that. Obviously now we've moved on to a different kind of realm for obvious purposes. I presume as you craft this ordinance, you're going to take care, obviously, in thinking about how exactly we get to the, the inherent, reasonable desire to want to enforce your ordinance. But this is a very tentative area of the law, obviously, and in many other respects, we don't have that ability, and probably for good reason. So, yeah, I would echo that sentiment that I hear both from Mr. Albrecht as well as Mr. King said. We really do need to spend some time thinking about how exactly, what do we want to accomplish, and how exactly we get there. Right. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
My biggest concern is the policing, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but, so if we say we're going to limit it to 3 or 4, are we going to put nail polish on the bottom of the feet so we know this one is, you had blue guy with, this color beak, and then green guy with this kind of beak, and then what, we're going to police them to make sure, oh yeah, sorry, I don't even know, but I'm going to know more, right? And then when those ones are gone, like you can't add new ones in. I mean, the grandfathering thing bothers me. We have people with an excessive amount, and I'm going to say excessive because they were excessive in their behavior when they were here, and they were adamant that they didn't care if we had a rule or not a rule. They were going to keep them regardless, and they didn't care about their neighbors. So those kind of people I have a problem with. I don't have a problem with people who show respect to their neighbors and try and make this whole process work and have what I would think is a reasonable amount of animals. So I just feel like we're opening, that this is a really broad thing. It's a really slippery slope. And I know, John, you're trying to address it, but I feel like there are so many layers that are just going to be crazy. I don't want a problem for enforcement. I don't want a problem for the people who currently have them and are doing the right thing. And I don't want a problem for people who are going to have neighbors who are not going to care about what they care about. And it's going to cause friction.
Well, and I think that, Matt had brought up the fact that we do have limits on how many dogs people can have. And that's it. So do we say, well, gosh, you have 7, so we're just going to ignore the other 3? I mean, what do we do in that instance? I mean, I hate to go, that's the only example we really have from an enforcement of animal policy here in town.
Well, chickens have a lifespan of what, you said 8 years? So maximum of 8 years, you can be grandfathered into having your 7 or whatever it is above, and you identify that at the time of licensing. And I don't know if we're talking about this being an annual license or whatever, but it gets cut off in 8 years, and you have to be within compliance by that time.
But then we have the same problem we have today. Oh, so-and-so gave me their too because they're not going to have chickens anymore. Now they're my friends. They watch TV with me. They love my granddaughters, right?
Well,
I mean, but then we're in the same
is,
exact place because it's an emotional issue.
But if we're explicit.
See, the concept being, okay, so they have 8 today. They're all brand new chickens. So they have 8 today that are all chicks. So for 8 years, they have those. But, as a chick may or may not pass, may pass away. So we've now said, oh, well, I can keep 8 for 8 years. So I'm going to just keep replacing those that pass away for the next 8 years.
It's like anything else, though. I mean, I know people who have more dogs than they were supposed to. Lady I used to run into walking dogs all the time. She had 4 or 5 dogs. I mean, but to the extent that no one's complained, no one's kicked her dogs out, right? I mean, it's the same thing. We can only worry about the only time it's a problem is when it's a problem when the neighbors are complaining. So to the extent that the neighbors are complaining, then we have parameters that we can enforce. But this lady that had all the dogs, no one was obviously complaining because they were all in the window all the time. I mean, so we to the extent that all the neighbors are getting along and they're not complaining about the chickens, it's when or whatever, the dogs, when there's a complaint, then we have parameters to enforce it within. Right? I mean, we can't be overreaching into everyone's homes all the time and taking care of issues that no one's complaining about.
But that's not even fair, because there are people who are anti-chicken, and it always sounds so mean, you know what I mean? There are people who would prefer not to have chickens in their neighborhood, and they don't come to these meetings. And I don't run into a lot of people, but I can tell you, I was at a restaurant the other day, Clawson Steakhouse, and I had 2 people come up to me, and nobody knows me, tell me they're not going to have chickens. I'm like, go to city council. Could you please just come to the city council meeting so it's not just me, is what I really want to say, right? But people don't come. And how do you enforce stuff? You don't enforce it. You don't. And you need people just to respect each other. And so if we're not going to enforce it and there's no way to, then why have we wasting 4 months on this topic if it's something we can't even resolve?
So you put reasonable ordinances in place with reasonable parameters for enforcing it, and when an issue comes up, then that's what you look to. If someone says there's rats, well, you know, they met these criteria that rats aren't going to be attracted to them or whatever. You have the ordinance as the reasonableness. If the neighbors complain about this person with all the dogs, then we could say, I'm sorry, Mrs. So-and-so, you have too many dogs. We need to address that and go through the process that's in place like everything else.
Okay, well, so in your example, so if somebody currently has 11 chickens, and we're going to grandfather and allow that to happen, and the next door neighbor says, I don't like it. So now the neighbors complained. Do we say, well, they're grandfathered in for 8 more years, there's nothing we can do about these 11 chickens? I don't think that's fair to a neighbor that has a concern.
But it's not fair to have someone who's been able to enjoy their chickens for X period of time to now say you have to get rid of, you know, would you be able to pick which dog you're going to get rid of?
Yes.
You have to. Right, my chairs. That would be real easy.
But that's so you know, they've been able to have them for years, and now we're going to tell them to get rid of it, and that's not fair to those people either.
I'm just playing devil's advocate.
I know, and I'm just
from
covering it,
that
right.
8 years. So one here we say we're going to wait till that there's an issue with the neighbor. You know, trying to find that balance was my only point.
And you say they've been able to have them,
Yeah, thank you, Matt.
but the current ordinance doesn't allow that.
But we've heard stories time and time and time again, and I'm not going to call the citizens liars, time and time again, where they've had the code enforcer at their house, and the code enforcer has said, it's okay. So, and we heard that story multiple times at the town hall. We've heard that story in the emails that people have sent us. I've heard that story talking to people. So, for whatever reason, a plethora of the citizens have reported the same experience, that they had a city official at their house saying, it's okay.
We're talking about 7 residents.
I was going to say, yeah, let's
It's
make
not
it
a
clear,
plot-
it's not a
seven.
plethora of
It's
residents who
7.
own chickens, probably not a
so.
plethora of residents who want chickens, but maybe a plethora of residents who don't want chickens, who just don't make their voice heard, just for the record.
To your point, not everyone comes to the meetings. So I have talked to people who haven't come to the meetings who have reported the same experience.
Did you find more chicken owners than we have had?
I
at the
cannot
meeting?
confirm or deny the allegations.
It's a secret society. The chicken people
It
are a
is,
secret
though,
society.
but they are, and they've gone unnoticed. I mean, when I found out some of these people who had chickens, aside from my neighbor, who obviously I knew because I could see it, but there were houses that I used to walk by all the time, and I never had any idea they had chickens, and they are afraid to come out now too.
I don't know if this is a great analogy here, but I mean, if we had a police officer who was telling residents that it was okay to drive 40 miles per hour on Main Street, right? That doesn't mean that it's okay to drive 40 miles per hour on Main Street, right?
Why?
I think. I mean, I don't
Why?
know. I don't know
Because
at
it's a
this point,
safety
right?
issue, and there's other circumstances that makes that behavior unsafe to the community. We have not established that owning chickens makes you unsafe to the community. So those are apples and oranges. Driving 40 miles an hour down Main Street where it's 25 is unsafe to the people around it. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, there has to be a traffic study to set a speed limit that establishes
Again, the
whether or not it's
analogy
safe to
wasn't
the community.
The
Right?
analogy wasn't perfect. I mean, I don't know, Mr. Attorney. I mean, if we had a code officer telling people they didn't have to have, breakers in their house, right? Does that mean that they don't have to have breakers in their house? I don't know how enforcement works if somebody has been told verbally that the ordinance is does not
being
need
enforced at this time.
to be followed.
I as a prosecutor, I'd be very concerned about the legitimacy of that statement being made.
Ignorance of the law is not an
It sure
escape
isn't,
of the
and
law.
that's really deterring someone from following the law. And it's under the force of authority that it's made. That's disconcerting to me. And that's why I said initially that if there's enforcement has to be really trained so they understand excuse me, the dynamics of enforcement in this particular situation. It's not easy, but they've got to learn and get educated. So let me ask you this question, all of you. Before this arose, was chickens really an issue in this city?
Only to the neighbors who didn't like the chickens next door to them, right?
And were there many claims that came forward about that?
Nope.
And so as we get into the expansive discussion of this, we are finding that there are more issues that are being created that may have existed before but were never identified as ones that we're now thoroughly considering because you're that deliberative. And so what I'm saying basically is, if the public has a copy of the ordinance that we gave, I would respectfully request that they give me their observations. I think you might want to deliberate for a while on this and weigh the pros and the cons, and then I can give you a report from what I get from the chicken owners. And I hate to say this, but this is a business decision, and that's your call. And it's, you exercise the good judgment that you all have and the deliberative sense that you've demonstrated, and you will come up with the right answer. And not everyone will like it, but it'll be the right answer, as long as you feel comfortable about it.
Mr. Haberman?
Yes, I'm sorry,
I saw you.
No, it's just that if you look at the number of ordinances, and John's got a real thick book of them, we don't have enough people to enforce every one of those ordinances, all of the ordinances that we've got in this city. And so by necessity, because of rational staffing levels, we enforce most of our nuisance ordinances on a complaint basis. We do not go looking for chickens. We don't go looking in people's backyards for violations. If neighbors or people complain and it is a situation that has the potential for a violation, then we will open up a case and we'll do an investigation. Wow. And so while I understand all of the discussion and everything, in the end, our actions as far as enforcement officers are going to be pretty much driven on a complaint basis. If 10 people in this city have chickens and no complaints are filed against 9 of them, we're not going to be going looking for those 9 people who own chickens. We're going to be dealing with the one that we're getting complaints on, and we're going to try to resolve the issue.
And in addition to that, there are circumstances where we may decline to issue a citation and say, we'll help you do a citizen's complaint, where you have to go in on that complaint. And sometimes that brings up a sense of reality about, what do you mean? I got to be a witness and I got to pursue this? Yeah, you're complaining it. And sometimes they back off. So that's another alternative that's used.
If I may, and I mean, there are certain situations, I know last time I was in Clawson, in fact, we had one where the judge ordered one of the neighbors or the 2 neighbors to walk around with a placard, "Love thy neighbor," back and forth up and down the street. Because you get situations where neighbors try to use us as a club to deal with their neighbors. that's the most awkward situation we get involved in, and it just steals a lot of staff time. But again, most of our code enforcement is on the basis of complaint. Exceptions would be hazard issues, for example, snow and ice on sidewalks and things like that that you can observe as you're driving by. Those are public safety hazards. But most nuisance complaints, and that's what we're talking about here, is for the most part a nuisance complaint are going to be handled on a complaint-only basis.
All of that makes sense, and of course, I would hope we'd be a community that would want to rectify most situations with a conversation rather than going in and having to throw a book at someone and say, this is what you did, and then this is the consequence of that. I would think most times we could probably get away without having to use a strong arm on people, and that's what I would want for us, for our community. So back to the whole drafting this ordinance, I'd like to see it friendly. I mean, you guys know where I stand. I'm outnumbered here, which is fine, but I still want everyone to be respected in the process. And I feel these two women who've come so faithfully for this whole process have shown such kindness and education and compassion for other people, because you really have, that they would be an excellent source to give our code enforcement officers a basic understanding of what is required. And I'm assuming both of your coops don't look exactly the same, which is great, because that's an example of this is one way to do it, this is another way to do it. We both incorporate the same safety features and whatever, right? So in looking in the future, I think we really just need some time on this again. To look at the highlights of what this is, and maybe this will be our banner for all of 2019. Let's carry it to 220, right? This will be 220 issue, chickens in 2020, and we'll just keep going with it because, hey, it's really fun, right? Who's bored with this one? Nobody, right?
There is an election this year, so this could be an issue for that. If I could,
Matt, or are you going to go?
No.
Make t-shirts for
I
you?
don't want to. No.
headdress?
Permit fees. This is just a very practical issue, Mr. King-Sepp, that you might consider. Permit fees. I don't like putting dollar amounts directly into the ordinance. I think we have other ordinances where we say that a separate schedule will be maintained for license and permit fees, just so it doesn't have to be updated through an ordinance.
Otherwise, you have to amend it every time.
Right.
And I just want to make sure that, I know I'm obsessing, but this is our opportunity to do it the right way. And I want to make sure that it's clear enough, maybe not very restrictive, but at least there's clear directions on what we want and what we don't want. Just so that, if there's a neighbor problem, there's something concrete to go back to instead of it being emotionally driven. And that's what I want to make sure we see in this ordinance.
Well, I think some of the owners can tell us things along those lines that would be helpful.
I did want one more point, if I might, not to belabor this, but one of my concerns with the grandfathering clause, if you will, is that from the time that we've published this to the time that it's adopted, it will allow anyone to go out and obtain as many chickens as they want. And that's just one of my concerns with the language there.
That's interesting. Yeah. Okay, I'll noodle that.
Because I'd be surprised if any current chicken owners hadn't thought of that already, so.
And if you hadn't, here's an idea.
I think we ought to put a stop now on how many chickens you're allowed. Like 6 chickens
Could
to
do
me is
that.
good enough.
That's a lot.
Isn't there 4 in there, in the ordinance?
I like 4. Just personally, I'm a 4. I think that was the number that we had of dogs.
Yeah.
It stands out to me, but.
Right. All right, we'll look at that then.
So we're back thinking, and give us something else, Mr. King-Sepp, at a future date,
Yes.
please. Next up.
Yes, if I can just finish this note. Next up, and I appreciate the input of Chief Anderson and Chief Sorvello in this, and its changes to the Traffic and Safety Board, and with a special needs ordinance, as well as changing some of the composition on the on the board. So let me go first to the policy, and I'll go through that very briefly. The policy is several pages long, but what we added to it was a statement under subsection 7A. It says, a requirement of any review to be considered, and this is for the special needs sign, shall require supporting documentation in advance of any hearing before the Traffic and Safety Board. The decision to be made shall be based upon the presentation and documentation accompanying the request being made. Any action taken upon such request shall contain in the motion the fact basis in support of that decision. Why do I say that? This is an administrative proceeding, and I've always advocated, this is where my due process side comes out, that if I'm going before some administrative body, I better darn well know what the heck the rules of the game are. And if you make a decision, you're telling me the facts that I'm aware of that is a basis for the decision. You just can't say you're denied. And so I put this in here because if I'm an applicant and I'm denied, I ought to have a right to appeal. It's an appeal to you all. And that's in the ordinance itself and the change. And so it's on a fact basis that's demonstrated, not just we deny your request. So I'm very strong on that right of the applicant to always know what the basis is for any administrative decision. In the ordinance itself, we had a couple of things. One was the standard. This is subsection 7863. I inserted a standard for decision, and this complements what I said in the policy that I just read. Any matter coming before the board for decision shall require supporting documentation in advance of any hearing to define and provide the basis of any decision to be made. After a presentation or hearing on the matter submitted to the board, the vote shall specify the fact basis, circumstances supporting the decision of the board. Any person aggrieved by the decision of the board can appeal that decision to the city council for reconsideration, citing the factual basis for such request. Again, I think it is important. Traffic and safety is an administrative board. People complain about roads, too much traffic, we need more signs, so forth. And there may be businesses that are the cause of that. And if I'm a business owner, I come, wait a minute. That's the only place my customers can park because I have no parking around here. So, I'm not intentionally causing the problem because I didn't create the fact I don't have parking on my site or limited parking. So they have a grievance, a perceived grievance. And if they come before and contest a traffic order to put up signs, there ought to be a fact basis for that. In the context of special needs sign, the question was raised, what about medical records? Do I have to show those? And I put a twist on that. If you come in and you're asking for a special needs signage, it is your obligation to demonstrate the physical ailments or disability or circumstances unique to you that justify that sign. You can show to the police chief, and I'm putting him in this position, or his representative, medical records that justify that. And if the chief asks for a copy of that, those have become sealed records. They're not public records because they're medical records. And he's getting information so he can make a report to the Traffic and Safety Board that I reviewed the documentation that legitimizes the basis of this request. So that's another essence of this thing. So if anyone comes in and a medical record is shown to demonstrate it, and the chief keeps a copy because he thinks it's important to do that, it is a sealed copy and released only by court order. That gives the individual the assurance that the privacy necessary that they have a right to is, in fact, honored. So that's what's in there. The other thing was the fact that, the chief is ex officio, and they had problems over the years with not enough members showing up, and the chief couldn't vote. didn't have a right to vote or participate. So we've changed that now. So if there is not a quorum, the chief can make up that quorum and vote on the issue and all that. So because this is an important body and you want it not to be stale, you want it to work as it is organized to be. And if it's on a monthly basis, it's on a monthly basis. So that's what we put in is, and I know this chief has a sense of objectivity, so he'll give the right vote and always correct explanation for the vote. But that's where we corrected that aspect of it. So if you authorize us to go forward with it, then we can prepare the ordinance and submit it at the next meeting for a first reading. And then we can get that done so they can proceed with their business. So those are the changes to the Traffic and Safety Board, the Special Needs Policy that is being proposed.
So I need a motion in regard to preparing it for first reading the next meeting?
Yeah, you're referring to the council to prepare the ordinance for first reading, the next meeting.
You need a motion to that effect?
Yeah, I really don't need it.
I think so.
No, I don't need it.
Prepare, Mr. Kingsett.
That's it.
And we'll look forward to it for the next meeting's discussion.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, nothing more.
Thank you. Thought you stopped.
There is one thing.
Sorry, it's too late.
I promised you a long time ago I was going to do something on the sign ordinance. As you know, we've had a couple of interruptions that have taken up my time, some of which have been FOIA requests and so forth. So I'm now free that I can start working on that. And I've talked to the planner about working with them on the sign ordinance and culling it down to as few pages as possible. And the theory is going to be a recitation of some of the comments by the judges in the Reed case and in another case, Central Hudson, which is a 1980 case. And that's going to be in the ordinance as a purpose that sets the framework for why the regulations are going to be as they are. And I'm going to try to cull this down as much as I can. And if people want variances, then they can go into that section of the ordinance that allows the variances from the sign on basically larger signage and so forth. And we'll have standards there that they have to meet. But I really want to cull this down so you don't have 40 pages.
Where applicable and appropriate, please include Mr. Haberman or the building department to keep the planning board, planning commission and zoning board abreast of what's going on as appropriate, please.
They will.
Thank you. Anything else?
That's all I have.
Okay. Mr. Haberman, the city manager's report. We
Yes,
got
ma'am.
there finally.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Mayor. Just very briefly, I have been working very aggressively on the budget. I sent a budget schedule to you, I believe, on Friday, indicating that the budget needs to be presented to the council, as I recall, second meeting in April and adopted by the second meeting in May. And so many of you might wonder, why am I working so aggressively on the budget? Well, I will go back to my first city, way back when. And I walked in on January the 15th and sat down at my desk, and it was a small town, and we had a clerk treasurer, and we were discussing a few things, and I found a pile of papers about 6 inches high on my desk, and I asked her what it was, and she said, that's your budget backup material from your department heads and things. Oh, I said, oh, that's wonderful. I said, I've never done a budget before. When's the budget due? She says, oh, it has to be adopted by state law the 1st of February. Mind you, this was January 15th. Given the time frame and the way things are coming together, I did not want to leave whomever is chosen to succeed me, leave them with that lurch. And so what I want to try to do, and what I'm trying to do, is have a completed budget in time for them to review that and make a determination on their own. And then, of course, there's a month's period between the time it's presented to the council and it's adopted in May. So that way they don't have to go back and get all the numbers on all the bond payments and all the things that go into it. So that's what has been a lot of my focus, at least this week. I've had the department heads coming in, and we've been going through the departmental budgets. So I just wanted to pass that on. That's why I'm working on kind of an accelerated schedule, because time is short, and of course, everything seems to be coming together about the same time. And I thought it would be nice to have that document at least available. Oh, that concludes my report.
Thank you. Okay, city clerk's report.
Your
I
first
would
one.
like to take the time to thank mayor, members of council for your vote of support. I'm definitely prepared and eager to exceed your expectations, and I look forward to it.
Welcome,
And-
we're excited to have you.
On another note, the Compensation Commission will be meeting tomorrow at 6 p.m. in the City Hall Community Room. And this commission meets every 2 years. And that is all.
Thank you. Any unfinished business? New business? The floor is now open for public discussion. No one? Thank you, we do appreciate it. Just state your name and your address, please.
Maria Tyra, 708 Dreon. You know I wasn't going to not say anything. Thank you very much for your very level-headed, non-biased research. I really appreciate that. He's done a great job, and you guys are all putting a lot of thought and effort into this. And I just had a couple of comments I wanted to make on the different things. Number one, yeah, I would definitely not be happy with a code ordinance guy walking into my house or my backyard without me being there. I don't want them to like use it as probable cause for anything else they might find in there. Not that there's anything there. But, you know, what I consider goods, other people don't. I know that, you know, there are people that don't want chickens, and I don't know what the number are, but like he said, I don't think we've had a lot of complaints. In my actual, or me getting the ordinance violation, no one complained about my chicken, my poor one lonely chicken. The building, did you guys say the building inspector, somebody saw the chicken and brought it back? There wasn't a complaint. And I know of a few more chicken owners that are like under the radar, that nobody's complained about them. I suggest that going forward, perhaps the person or the household that would like to have chickens might want to get their neighbors to sign off before they come to put in for a permit. I mean, if that sounds reasonable. And that way, the people that are around you already are saying, oh, yeah, sure, you can, chickens are okay by me. I'm concerned, though, what happens if you do that and then somebody moves. And then you got to think about somebody coming in that's like, are you going to have to say to them, well, it was already signed off on by your previous owner of your house, you know? I don't know if that's something you guys want to throw into the mix because we got so many different things going on, but that might be something you want to take into consideration. I don't have any problems helping out. Any questions? And I had one more thing to say, but it's slipping my mind. Oh, the grandfathering. I know you guys researched it, and you said chickens have like a 10-year lifespan. I've never had a chicken with a 10-year lifespan. They don't last that long because they're outputting. And if you're giving them light in the wintertime so that you can keep them warm, like in my case for my chickens, because I can either put a heat lamp in there or I could put a light bulb in there to hopefully keep them a little extra warm. The extra light makes them output eggs in the wintertime when they wouldn't normally. They'd be using that to stay warm. Their chicken egg laying time goes faster that way. So I keep my chickens when they're in henopause, and I let them live out their retirement. You know, I can't do anything. I don't want to do anything. You know, they're my pets. So if I got 6 chickens and 4 of them are running around, you know, or let's say I got 4 chickens and 3 of them are running around not laying eggs, I'm going to be at the store buying eggs and then chicken shaming them on Facebook. But I don't think I'm going to run out and get 2 more chickens just for eggs. I mean, I've never, like, I still am not able to have a lot of eggs to, like, eat and share with my neighbors, right? So I don't think that would be a concern. I do like the idea of sneaking in some chickens, though.
Good job, Matt.
That's great. That was a great suggestion. I really like that idea. I'm not going to do it, though, but, you know, I did like the idea. And I just wanted to put that little 2 cents. I did not, is that already up on the website, the current one that you were just discussing?
I don't know if it is.
It is in the council packet. I'll see if it's separately on the
Why
website.
not- if you could,
as
yeah.
well.
Yeah, because I would like to look at
That
it,
would
and
be
then,
nice.
you know, I'd be more than happy to give my verbose email to you again about, you know, my opinion, so sorry about that, you guys, I'm a little wordy sometimes, so. But the grandfathering in, I don't think that you're gonna be able to, like, take little chicken mug shots, you know, and like Sue said, you can only, like, put the parameters in place and then hope everybody's going to follow them, you know. If you start out with, you know, I've got 1 chicken and 1 borrowed chicken right now.
Sleepover.
Yeah, sleepover, thank you, right? It's a sleepover, chicken sleepover. If I go in and I say, like, I got 2 chickens, I'm gonna get 2 more, or I'm gonna get 4 more, whatever. If one of them dies, and believe me, they're going to, I'm probably, I would like to know if I have to come back and get another chicken permit, like pay for another chicken, like, or am I holding that spot? Am I paying for the amount of chickens as a spot, a placeholder? Or am I, you know what I'm saying? Or am I, the grandfathering thing, I like the natural culling down to the amount. And if you have somebody that's grandfathered in like that, I'm sure they'd be more than willing to, well, maybe not, more than willing to let you come in after a certain point and say, oh, okay, you've reached your culled point. But, you know, it would be nice to know that if I lost a chicken or 2 chickens, that I could replace them without having to come back and get 2 more permits for them.
Are you making notes of all these, Mr. King Septon's suggestions and
He
thoughts?
wasn't
Yeah,
even
I have. Getting neighbors' consent, I found those in a couple of ordinance out of the state of Michigan. One was down south and the other was in the Midwest. And I thought about that, and I thought, well, if chickens are really docile and they're not much of a problem, why do you want to do that and then have a bunch of, one of the 4 neighbors, you had to do about 4 neighbors, say, you know, I'm not going to do it. What are you creating then? And I thought, are we creating an issue we don't need to create? So I dismissed that type of approach.
Well, that makes sense. I mean,
But these are things to work out, and it's a discussion. When I do an ordinance, my assumption is that everyone will follow the ordinance. I believe in the goodness of people to follow the ordinance.
Right,
I don't
no.
try to say, well, how are we going to guide against someone being deceptive? I try not to do that. I may do it by putting in different language that suggests don't do it, but I don't really write the ordinance that way. I write it in a positive sense when you're dealing with ordinances like this. So,
well, thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you all very much.
Maria, I got one question. What do you do if one of your birds dies?
Oh, well, I've had that happen a couple of times. So, and I started with 1, and then I got it a friend, and then its friend died, and then I was like, oh, now I got 1 very lonely chicken, and they get depressed and they hide in the coop, and you got to worry about it. I personally would get my chickens off Craigslist from egg farmers who were selling chickens that were past their egg laying prime. So I'd go out and I'd pay $6 for a live chicken. I'd travel an hour and a half, out into BFE to get it and bring it back. I finally wisened up and bought a third chicken. So if one dies, then I at least have 2 left.
What do you do with it when it dies, though?
The body, is that what you're asking about, the body?
Yeah, there's a small graveyard in my backyard. Oh, no, I can't eat it. Once I name them, I'm not eating them. Those are my,
I'm not.
it's like it would be like eating my
respond to any of
cat.
those.
Yeah, no. But, so, that's,
Lost control.
so
regarding
like, a lot of the
chickens.
chickens I get are not very good at laying eggs anymore, I have to give them pep talks and lots of extra mealworms. So like, the egg thing is not a big deal with me. It's more about looking out in the yard and seeing them, and they make me smile. Every time I see them, I smile. And the neighbors love them. Like I said at several meetings, the guy next door feeds them worms, and, I'm sure there are people out there whose neighbors don't love them. I haven't met those. Well, okay, I've met one of those people.
He's not your neighbor, so it's okay.
It's not my neighbor, so, right. So, but thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Anyone else?
Hey, good evening.
Good evening.
How's everybody doing? Matt Cook, 406 Fisher Court. Just a couple things, and I won't belabor it because it's late. The chicken thing, I went to the town hall meeting. It was productive. It felt like it was productive at the time. A lot of conversation. Here we are, 4 months later, still talking about it. My personal opinion, this thing's kind of blown up out of proportion. This thing's getting really crazy. Y'all are going to come up with this ordinance with all these parameters that are never going to be enforced. There's no way to enforce them. Now you're going to empower people to walk up and down the streets with binoculars and count chickens in backyards and start calling down here to City Hall. In my opinion, maybe we need to step back, look at the fact that we currently have an ordinance that outlaws them, right? That's black and white. They're not allowed here right now. So, and whether or not the code enforcement said, you could have them or not, I doubt anybody has any of that in writing. Maybe we just step back and say, okay, chickens are allowed in Clawson. And is there some way to draft an ordinance that would trigger some type of mediation between a neighbor that would have a complaint, and under those unique circumstances, there's going to be one or two, because that's what triggered this whole conversation to begin with. There's some kind of mediation, there's a discussion. If you can't come to an agreement, then that person has to get rid of chickens.
What we have done in the past is we refer people to the Oakland Mediation Center, but they both have to agree to go. You can't force them. And in those instances in which they go, the cases are resolved. Obviously, when they don't go, it's a continuing problem. But we do use that aspect. I don't put it into an ordinance, though I try to do it informally because the whole process is informal.
Right.
If you put it in an ordinance, you make it structured, and I try not to do that.
Well, if you were to change or leave the ordinance as it is, that they're not.
Well, yeah, there's that alternative, the simple approach.
Right.
You're allowed this number of chickens, period. Yeah, that is the simple approach.
Yeah.
And sometimes we do get overwhelmed in complications. Sure. And you blame the lawyers for that, really.
Yeah, so ultimately, just hope that y'all keep it as simple as possible. Because there's no way, based on what I'm hearing tonight, there's no way this is going to be enforced. Not possible.
2020.
Yeah. So, anyways, I wanted to ask what the status of the city manager was. Is there?
The applications are due in by March 1st, and
Okay.
then there's a process, and I believe it's March 14th or 15th. There's a full day scheduled so that it's on this month, or the month of March, we should have somebody with an offer. And
So there's been some headway there. There's some applications.
She confirmed 8 of them
Okay.
about a week or two ago, and said that the applicants have till March 1st to get the rest of them in. She's planning on doing a summary of what she has on March 29th.
Okay.
or excuse me, February 28th. So the day before they're due, she's planning on giving us a proposal on what she has already at that point.
Okay. So my next comment was on Ms. Mitchell here. My limited dealings with her, you need to just go ahead and make her permanent. Don't worry about the interim part. Go ahead and make her permanent, because we don't need to be a victim of another city clerk leaving for another location. So I feel that she needs to have that security to have that position permanent. I was glad to hear that there's not going to be any budget impact to the city manager being gone, so that's good that Mr. Haberman's being proactive, so thank you. I did have a question, and you may not be able to answer this, probably for the city manager. There was I guess, in the past budgets that I've reviewed, there's a substantial payment to Honeywell for some energy upgrades. Do we know when that payment concludes?
Not off the top of my head. It's a bond issue. Typically, if it's done under the process that I'm familiar with, the energy savings that we received through those changes actually are offsetting the bond payments. But if you would care to go ahead and either email me or buzz me tomorrow, I've got the file there, and I'll be happy to give you the schedule.
Okay. I was just wondering when that was that payment was going to be ending. It might free up some money in the budget.
Don't be surprised if it's 10 or 15 years.
Yeah, okay. Let's see. So with the city manager being gone and interim city manager obviously here, is there anyone serving on the SACRA board?
I'll let you answer.
Yes.
You are?
No, I'm not. Mr. Drinkwine has been serving in for the last few months, and I'm satisfied right now at that. And I work with him to get the information. But typically, when the city manager, the difficulty with an interim city manager is, they appoint me, and then 3 months later they have to appoint somebody else.
Right.
And there's already a person in place, and I couldn't see any necessity or any reason why I'd want to change that. But typically, the city manager would be appointed by the council as the member representative of the city. So I would expect that would happen in April or May.
Okay.
Mr. Drinkwine has been on that board for many years. So this was not a new thing based on Mr. Pollock leaving.
So just so I'm not confused, there's SACWA and then there's SACRA. So
Yeah, he's on both
He's doing
boards.
both of them. Okay.
Yeah, when I was here the last time, I was on the board, and Harry was the alternate.
Okay.
And we doubled, and he was on one board, and I was on the other, and we're alternates on the opposite boards.
Okay, good. So along those lines, SACRA, trash removal. I had previously talked with the ex-city manager about this and was wondering if there was any possibility to consider a change moving forward, and I don't know if it would have to go up for a vote or not. Currently, the way that the city taxes residents is for rubbish removal is on a millage rate.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's around 3 mills and some change, something like that, per property. My concern with that is that, and not all cities around the area that I know pay for their rubbish collection that way. But my concern is me being a new resident to the city. I've just purchased a home here in the past couple of years. Obviously, with the whatever it is, Proposal A, Headley Amendment, I'm not sure which one, I reset my taxable value on my home. So whereas multiple people in my neighborhood that have lived there 15, 20 years have been parking in these houses for a long time, which is fine, their taxable value is substantially less, in some cases half of what mine is for a similar home. Mm-hmm. So as a result of that, they're paying half of what I'm paying in rubbish collection fees, whereas me and my wife live in this house and we make half the amount of trash that they do. So it's a little bit of a sort of, people like me that are newer to the city, and there's beginning to be more and more of them, are paying and picking up the bill for everybody else's rubbish collection. So is there an opportunity to remove that from the tax bill and move it over to like a fee-based system that's just on a address?
Mayor, I mean, I can answer the question if you'd like, or I can talk to him at a.
That's fine. I don't want to.
Yeah, because there's a lot of things. I've worked both ways, and by the way, when I moved to Clawson in 2006. I bought a house in 2007, faced exactly the same situations you are talking about. The only difference is the market crashed and I lost my real value on
Yeah.
top of everything. But there's arguments both ways. The one thing about the millage is that the statute is as I recall, it's a 1907 or 1904 statute, and it's very broad in its definition. So it could be used for street sweeping and a variety of other things that are related to refuse, not necessarily just garbage collection. So if there are other services that we would provide that would be covered under this millage that would not be covered on a fee-based system. And so, and a fee-based system can be very complicated, not complicated, but then you start dealing with commercial and various other things, because commercial people also pay for refuse removal, whether they or pay the millage, whether they generate trash or not.
Right.
So it's no system is perfect,
Sure.
And I can relate, and having been there, understand your situation wholly.
Right, okay. All right, and then, thank you. I guess my last comment, I'd brought this up in the past. Now that we have a new planning commission on board, sustainability committee, is that something that we can start the process of formalizing, putting together? Just want to keep that on everybody's radar. I know there's a lot of stuff going on, so.
It is still on my radar.
Okay. All right.
We'll talk later.
Okay, all right, sounds good. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hello, Joy Wellman, 89 West Elmwood. Back to the chickens real quick. Short and sweet, because Maria brought up the neighbor's permission. No, I can't do that. My neighbors don't ask me, hey, I just got a cat, but I'm going to let it out and use your flower bed for a litter box, et cetera, et cetera. The yappy dog next door that I don't complain about. I can't have that, no. In roosters, if you've had any complaints, if the city has any complaints about chickens ever, it has been about my roosters crowing, which were not intentional. They were bought as hens, and they grew up and they crowed, and it takes a little bit to rehome them. So it was me. But hens don't make noise. So, Humane Society's gotten a few. I've got a few to a farm. So, I was the one with the rooster complaint. I'm confessing. And if code enforcers, I would be happy to talk to them at any point in time in the future. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. So we don't have to lock her up tonight.
Use the jail for storage.
Is that it?
Right.
Well, now public discussion is now closed.
Madam Mayor, I move we adjourn.
Support.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Willie? Councilmember Ayers?
Yes.
Councilmember Milan?
Yes.
Councilmember Moffett? Yes. Councilmember Albrecht?
Yes.
Good evening, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
It is.